Got it.
Okay, perfect. So hi, I'm Lucy Townsley, and I'm a women's health coach, and also I practice Chinese medicine and acupuncture. So I help women who are trying to get pregnant, who are going through pregnancy, also any when you've had your baby. I think sometimes that's when you really need help as well, because it's the time when you think you should be perfect from all the Instagram or Facebook posts. And then moving on, like, to perimenopause and menopause, that's an area that I really love helping women with, well, all areas actually. And today I'm joined by Annette Cashell, and she is a movement coach and does Pilates. And I love her her little kind of saying of the sitting disease, because we've all been suffering from that a lot, especially during this last couple of years working from home and not moving. So movement is incredibly important as we age. I'll tell you a little bit later on about that for me, but I'm going to let Annette explain everything, what she does and how it can help us in all areas, our early 20s all the way up to menopause and postmenopause. So, hi Annette, thank you so much for coming.
Not at all, thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about what you do and how you can help women.
Okay. Sure.
Or even men, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Pilates teacher and a movement coach, but I used to be a marketing manager, and I worked as a marketing manager for 10 years in Germany, in Silicon Valley. And I love my job, but my job didn't suit my body, and it all started to go downhill in my late 20s with lots of various health issues. So I quit my job and became a Pilates teacher. But my health...
Wow, that was a huge move for you.
Yeah, it was, but I had really bad back pain at the time, and the only exercise I could do was Pilates. I didn't know what Pilates was. This was my introduction to Pilates. I didn't even know. I never heard of it. And I couldn't believe how much it helped my back. So
what caused the problem with your back in the first place?
Well, probably a sedentary lifestyle, even though at the time I was considered active. So I would go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and I would walk a lot of weekends, but the rest of the time I wasn't moving at all. I was just sitting a lot, and that's what got me interested in the idea of movement versus exercise, because I was exercising according to the World Health Organization minimum requirements of 3 hours a week or whatever, but the rest of the time I wasn't moving very much. And that's just something that's built up with our modern life, that even when I started working in offices, I would have to move every 20 minutes because I'd have to go to the fax machine or the photocopier, or I'd have to stand up and bring something to my colleague. So the environment just forced me to move every 20 minutes. Nowadays, you could sit all day and never have to move because everything is, on your internet, and everything is brought to you. Even food is brought to you, So it's actually, don't beat yourself up if you're not moving much, because the whole of the world is kind of conspiring to make you move less, unfortunately. So when I realized that, I changed how I taught Pilates, and I also changed my everyday life. So I move a lot more now, frequently throughout the day. I still exercise because I like it, but I guess what I realized was I was what they termed an active couch potato. And that really shocked me, because I was a Pilates teacher. How could I be anything like a couch potato? But active couch potatoes are the people who exercise maybe even every day at the gym, but the rest of the time they're not moving. So you could have a 9 to 5 job sitting all day, go to the gym every day. That 1 hour of exercise is not enough to offset all the time that you sat. Unfortunately, it's a separate risk. So you need to bring little bouts of movement into your day throughout the day to offset that damage. And it actually got to the stage where I needed a neck fusion operation, and I avoided that by changing how I move throughout the day. So touch wood, I haven't got any pain meds now. I have no pain in my neck since I've made these changes to my life. And I've avoided the neck fusion operation. And I've also reversed bone loss in my spine and my hips by moving more. Doesn't mean jumping jacks and stuff every 20 minutes. It just means literally getting up off your chair, and very simple movements like that.
Wow, I didn't even think about that, because you think you're doing good, you've gone for your walk for an hour, or you've done your exercise,
yeah,
and then you're sitting, you think that you've got it covered.
Yeah, and that's what I how I describe it between movement and exercise. Exercise is usually when you do it, you kind of tick it off your list. You know, I've gone for my walk, I've done my gym, and it's fantastic. It is fantastic. Give yourself a pat on the back for that. But movement is what happens the rest of the day. And it doesn't mean you have to put on runners or special clothes or go anywhere. It's literally getting up and, you know, getting a glass of water, doing a stretch, looking at the window, that moves your eyes, even meditating, that's a form of movement because it changes how you move your ribs. So when you start thinking movement in the big picture, you realize it's actually very easy to bring movement into your day.
It is actually. I never even thought about like moving the eyes or you know, meditating. It would be something that I tell a lot of my patients that I see in my clinic is breathing, you know, breathing outwards. So I often get them to take a breath in, so they bring in their tummy, so then when they take their breath, exhale, so they bring in their tummy, and then when they take their breath in, the tummy expands, because that's a great way. But never thought about looking out the window and eye movement and neck movement.
Or even sitting on the floor. Like I'm sitting on the floor now doing the podcast, and I would sit on the floor a lot when I'm working on my computer. And not everybody can sit on the floor, but if you can, that's a great way to bring movement into your day, because you have to get down to the floor. That's movement. And you have to get up off the floor. That's movement, because you're hauling the weight of your body up and you're controlling it on the way down. So you don't have to sit flat on the floor. I'm actually sitting on a yoga bolster, you know, so you can sit on something comfortable like a cushion or something. But even to bring that in, like you're watching TV, you might sit on the floor for a little bit, or encourage your children to sit on the floor. Because when you're on the floor, you'll naturally move around as well, because it's not that comfortable. So you'll naturally change position much more often than if you're just lounging on your sofa.
That's interesting, actually, because sometimes, you know, as we age, and it's something that I notice, so I would have done a lot of horse riding when I was younger, and I don't do as much now, but I do try and go every day if I can. Not they're on their holidays at the moment, but I do try and go as much as I can. But it's only half an hour, 20 minutes. But I do a lot of movement, walking down, checking them back up again. So yeah, it's interesting. But I actually find sitting on the floor sometimes more comfortable than sitting on the couch. That's to do with my back. I just sometimes would lie down and up. I find that more comfier to do. So it's interesting.
And
especially as we age as well, the bone density, you know, reduces. That's a big thing, osteoporosis.
That's right. And it's really important. And I would send this message out to anybody who's been given a diagnosis of bone loss or osteopenia or osteoporosis, find out where it is. Because I often get women coming to me who have been diagnosed with osteoporosis, and I go, well, where is it? And they haven't been told. So is it in your wrist? Is it in your ribs? Is it in your hips? Is it in your spine? Because when we know where it is, we can specifically target that area to build it up. Because if you have it in your hips, for example, then there's no point going to the gym and doing bicep curls, which is what women are usually told to do. Go to the gym, start lifting weights. But if you don't know where it is in your body, you can't really target that area. And that's what you need to do. You need to target the area where you have the bone loss, because it's not all over your body. It's usually in one or two places. So when you know where that is, fantastic. And it's not just about going to the gym. For example, if it is in your hips, getting down to the floor and back up again builds bone in your hips, because it's an extra load to that area, and it's hard work for your body to get down to the floor and back up again. So I would always say do your exercises, but look at your lifestyle and start building stuff into your lifestyle to get the most out of your exercises. Because if you go to the gym every day and do your hip exercises, but then the rest of the day you're sitting in a chair, you're kind of undoing the good that you did at the gym. You know, you get much more out of it if you bring it into your everyday lifestyle.
That's so true, actually, because you become really, really stiff. I remember actually, because I broke my back when I was 23 in a racing accident. But I remember a few years ago, I was sitting on the beach with Amber one day, and she was playing around, and we were playing about lifting up our legs. It was a stupid, just a random game. And I could lift up my left leg, but I couldn't lift for all the tea in China, couldn't lift up my right leg. And it gave me such a shock, actually. And I would be telling people, do Pilates, do yoga, keep moving. And it was something that I had to start myself, because I couldn't. I was finding things like painting my toenails really hard to do. So I couldn't get my legs into a, you know, particularly my right side, that I couldn't actually bend down to do it. That's so right. I know that if I don't do anything, stretching or anything like that, that my hips would.
It just seize up. Yeah, it's move it or lose it is what they say. And also getting down to the floor and getting up again, you start to notice, oh, I always get up on my left leg. Why am I avoiding the right leg? So just by building and moving like this, you start to become kind of reintroduced to your body and how it's moving, and you'll start to notice, well, this area isn't quite as good, or I keep avoiding this. So it's really interesting for you to know that, have that knowledge, because then you'll start doing something about it.
Yeah, no, I started doing stretches and stuff, and started doing Pilates here in Loughrea, those type of things, and it has really helped me a lot, actually. And just silly things like, you know, when you're in the shower, bending down to pick up the shampoo. I was like, oh, I can bend down easier now. Do you know, little things like that?
Oh, yeah. So, absolutely. It's like when it ends up. So I always tell I used to teach an older adult Pilates class as well, and we would do exercise like that, you know, to be able to bring your knee into your chest, you know, so that over time you're still able to put your shoes on. That's a big thing, because you don't want to be stuck that you can only wear slip-ons, for example, because that's often what happens. People can't bend down to their shoes and tie their laces anymore, so then they start wearing slip-ons. But slip-ons aren't great for your feet because your toes tend to cramp every time. They kind of stiffen a little bit by having slip-ons. So that then makes your hips stiffer, and then you get back into that vicious cycle of not being able to reach your toes to tie your shoes. So it's kind of a vicious cycle that you want to keep up these things for very practical reasons, you know, to be able to paint your toenails, or even check your toenails, or even check for something underneath your sole of your foot if you stand on something. It's all very practical. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's just that movement that keeps it in. So often we hear lots of this as we, you know, as we age as well, about weight bearing exercise, or weight, you know, high intensity, low intensity. Is that something that you come across, or have you an opinion on it?
For women, you're speaking? Yeah. So definitely things start to change through menopause. Women become more sensitive to stress, you know, to the stress hormone. So there is a school of thought that says you can do high intensity, but for short periods of time. So you kind of, it's like the HIIT thing, the high intensity, low interval, you know, so you might walk, say if you're going for a walk, you're walking half an hour every day, fantastic. During that half hour, during part of it, go quickly and then slow down again, and go quickly and slow down again. So you're kind of pushing your body a bit, but then resting, pushing and resting, rather than pushing it for half hour. Try to go really fast for a little period of time as part of that walk. It's a bit like when you drive your car in traffic, it runs out of petrol much quicker than when you're coasting on the motorway. So your body has to burn more fuel if you're doing that high, low, high, low. So in terms of burning fat, it's a good approach for women. But it's also very important during perimenopause, menopause, to rest and relax, because we're more sensitive to stress during this time. That can build up, you know, retain fat in your body. So when I say movement, I don't mean moving all day, never resting. Really important to meditate, or just lie down for 5 minutes, or take a cup of tea and look out the window. You know, it's really important to bring down the stress level as well. And I would always say, do something that you love. Like I started dancing again with perimenopause. So I've taken up Zumba, not teaching it, but being part of a class. And I realized how much I missed dancing, and it's just a fun thing to do. So if you don't like exercise, find something that you really like. It might be a walk, it might be dancing, it might be rollerblading, who knows what it is, it might be cycling, but choose something that you actually like doing. It doesn't have to be for a long period of time, but kind of get those endorphins up and get that happiness and that feeling of, wow, my body is an amazing thing. Look what it can still do.
That's really great advice, actually. I remember, again, having a patient here, and she'd forgotten how much she'd loved swimming, and she'd stopped doing it just through family and not enough time for herself, you know, tired, job, working, you know, all of every excuse that we put in front of us. And I remember I was sitting with her and I was like, what did you like doing? You know, and she goes, I loved swimming. So I set her a challenge of like starting off by swimming once a week, and then she started taking the kids, and she's just got back into it. She loves sea swimming was her thing.
Right, fantastic. Yeah,
yeah.
You kind of get out of touch with yourself sometimes with busyness and with children and putting other people's priorities first. But you know, it's a cliche, but you can't give unless you have something to give, and you need to top up your own vessel. And particularly with COVID, and you know, self-care might have gone out the window. Even 5 minutes of self-care can make a difference, even if it's just having your cup of coffee and really enjoying that cup of coffee, and yeah, being good to yourself, being kind.
So if for the sitters during the day, what would you recommend for us to do?
Sure. So if you're you know, have a desk job, you probably have a lot of Zoom calls. So what I always say is stand up at the start of every Zoom call. So just get into a habit. When you have a Zoom call, you stand at the start. You'll probably get tired after 5 to 8 minutes, and that's fine. You can sit down. Over a while, you might be able to stand up again, maybe halfway through the Zoom call. So we're not aiming to stand all day, because that's just as bad as sitting all day. Mm-hmm. But if you get into the habit of standing at the start of every Zoom call, it just kind of breaks up the sitting, and that's really important. So there's nothing really wrong with sitting. It's the amount we do. It's constantly. So breaking that up was very important. And then the other problem with sitting in a chair is it's always the same position. So if you sit on the floor sometimes, or you sit on a yoga ball sometimes, or you sit on a lower stool sometimes, or you sit cross-legged, these are all different experiences for your body, and it kind of changes the effect of sitting on your body. They're the two, probably the easier things to do. So reduce the amount you sit, and then try to change how you sit. Yeah, they're the two most important things, I would say.
So another area, and I'm not sure if this is something that you cover, is for women who've had children or haven't had children, is pelvic floor. Yeah. Is that something now that I would suffer from? You know, like incontinence comes along with that.
Yeah.
Jumping around, trying to hold it.
Yeah, I have a program on that, actually. So I do workshops on that, and I have an online program. And it's close to my heart. I know it's a big problem in the Western world, and that's the thing. In cultures where women continue moving, and men, there is less pelvic floor problems than in our sedentary culture. So the more you sit, the worse it is for your pelvic floor. So even if you're doing your Kegel exercises, you know, the contraction release exercises, even if you're doing that, if you're sitting a lot during the day, you're undoing the goodness of the Kegel exercise. If you're doing them, if you're wearing high heels, if you're wearing shoes at any heel, you're undoing the effect of that. So there's lots of ailments of modern day living that impact your pelvic floor. Even stress can impact your pelvic floor. So there's lots of lifestyle things that can help you with that. And as I said, I have a program on that. So there's 2 parts. One is the exercises you do for your pelvic floor, which are none of them Kegel related. They are to do with building up your glutes, lengthening your hamstrings, and working on your feet. Your feet, most people's feet in the modern world are pretty weak, the muscles in their feet, because we've worn shoes all our life. And that weakens our muscles. Shoes are like casts on your feet, a bit like wearing a plaster cast on your foot all your life. So you can imagine what happens, the muscles shrivel up. And the weaker your feet muscles are, the less strong your glute muscles are generally. And that impacts your pelvic floor. So there's 5 exercises I recommend in the workshop to work on your pelvic floor. But then the lifestyle is so important. Getting up regularly, walking more, sitting less, ditch the heels, reduce your stress.
I can feel the panic of ditching the heels.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people love their heels. If you're going to the Oscars, wear your heels. If you're going to a wedding, wear your heels. But in everyday life, do you really need to wear heels? I've transitioned now from wearing regular runners to minimal shoes. So minimal shoes have no heel, they're flat. You don't do it overnight, you build up gradually. But like I used to have to wear orthotics, I don't need them anymore. I always had knee pain, I don't have that anymore. So that's the end goal, is to wean yourself off heels and get the heel lower and lower and lower. Because the more of a heel you have, the more your body's impacted, unfortunately, particularly with your neck. And that's the route that I came to it, because I needed a neck fusion operation. I didn't realize that the problem with my feet was like creating a whiplash effect on my neck every step I took. So even though I went for 10,000 steps a day, because I had shoes with a certain heel, it had a really detrimental effect on my neck. So I had to wean myself off the kind of modern day shoes to the more minimal shoes. And I have to say, there's a big choice nowadays. Like when I started this, there weren't that many minimal shoes and they look pretty strange, but now they look pretty normal. They just have a lower heel. So I'd be a big fan of that. If you've been doing Kegels for years, and I know some women who have, and things aren't improving, Kegels might not be the answer for you. You might have to address this other approach, which is looking at your whole body, not just that one area of your pelvic floor, because your whole body, obviously it's interconnected. So you need to look at the whole body and address those muscles as well.
Interesting, actually, it's very interesting. So it's so strange because I don't like walking around. Well, I think it's the cold on my feet. If it's warm, I walk around in bare feet a lot, but it's the cold. So if you wear something,
yeah, I've got my fluffy socks on. So I got my fluffy slippers here, okay, but they're totally squishable. So it's almost as if I'm barefoot because there's no heel, and they have an anti-skid surface because I have wooden floors. So you don't want to skid along the surface because then your toes will just tighten more. So you don't have to be cold. You don't have to be barefoot. In summer, I will be barefoot, but in winter, for me, it's too cold. So yeah, there's always options. Or a yoga socks, yoga socks are nice too. Anything with an anti-skid is good.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. It's something I must invest in, as a pair of those
sheepskin slippers.
Yeah, and that may help and keep working on the pelvic floor. Yeah, I think it's an area that we shouldn't be embarrassed about because, especially if we've had babies, and some women do have it without having babies, but, either way, it doesn't matter. It's something that we should look at. Don't be embarrassed and reach out for help.
And it's so doable. Like it's annoying when the media kind of push the message that this is normal and you're going to have to live with this. It's not normal and you don't have to live with this. It's very common after pregnancy, but as you say, lots of women with no pregnancy ever still have pelvic floor. Lots of men have pelvic floor dysfunction, and it's linked to sitting for long periods of time. It's linked to our sedentary lifestyle. And again, don't beat yourself up. This is just the way life has become. It's just everything is conspiring to help you to move less. So unless you start actually trying to move more, you're going to move less because everything in the world is making it easier for you to move less. If you go to a shopping center, try looking for the stairs. Like you have to look 10 minutes to find the stairs. Everything is escalators. It's actually you have to actively look to move more nowadays because life is made to make you move less, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's true. Even like in the airports, you have those conveyor belts that convey you along.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Wow, you've given us so much stuff to think about there, things that I didn't even know were around. Thank you so much for that. It's been really, really informative. So if anyone wants to be able to get hold of you, how can they get hold of you?
Sure. So I've got a new website. It's called AnnetteCashell.com, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook under Annette Cashell as well. And if you sign up to my newsletter, that comes out every week. I give lots of tips like this. I'm very into practical takeaways and everyday stuff. So that's in my Friday newsletter. And if you sign up to that on the website or Instagram, you get my free guide. And that's how to sit less. And that's where I always start everybody is it kind of, you start to look at how much you're sitting during the day, where you're sitting during the day. There's a calculator in there to include, for example, if you go to the gym and you're cycling, that's still sitting, even though it's a very good thing to do. If your job is sitting all day, maybe the best exercise for you is not to cycle again at night, unless you're moving a lot during the day and breaking it up. So all that is in my how to sit less guide, and you get that when you sign up to my newsletter. So
how often, just before you go, how often do you think that we should move during the day? Like how, I'm sitting here now talking to you, so I've probably been sitting here for about half an hour. But I suppose this morning, some people might know that my addiction is horses, and I would have gone down and mucked them out and have come up, and I went back down again because I had to bring one in from the field. But so I'd be up and down a bit to them. But, and then I suppose in my clinic, because I do acupuncture, I do a mixture of up and down, but I do a good bit of sitting as well. But I tend to move a lot in my seat.
Yeah. So ideally, they say move every 20 minutes. So say you have a desk job, you're moving every 20 minutes. If you're not used to moving regularly, try to move every hour first. So stand up, walk around for a minute or two, grab a glass of water, do a stretch, look out the window, you know, that's fine. And then start to wean it down to maybe a half hour every 20 minutes. Some people like to look at it in a half-hour idea, so that you're sitting for 20 minutes, standing for 8, stretching for 2. That's another option if you're a desk worker. But you sound, what you're doing going out to horses and back is fantastic. That's amazing. That's so good. The amount of steps you're going to build up there is huge, and it's so different to sitting at a desk. So then I would just say, if you're doing a Zoom call, try to do a little bit more standing. Just break it up. So you're not always sitting, you're not always standing.
So my next Zoom call, I'm going to be sitting on the floor.
Yay! Fantastic. Let me know how you get on. Yeah.
Sit on the floor, or I'll start with my standing up.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. Oh, look, you've been amazing. Thank you so much. And again, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because I've got some more amazing speakers to come. And if you're interested in joining me on my menopause 12-week program, I will add the link for that as well. So thanks so much, Annette. You have been amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. See you soon. Thanks. Yeah.